All right, just on the way to the gym, gonna give you my quick 2 cents on waking up early, how to do it, what are the mindsets, the tips and hacks that you can do to make this easier for yourself. Disclaimer, it's always going to be difficult. Now, I'm someone who has been waking up early for a very long time now. I've done multiple months of consistent 4 a.m.s. I've done about 40 days of 3:30s. The past 2 days I woke up at 3:30 and 3:45. Sure, that was for work. I work on a dairy farm. I had to bring the cows into the cow shed. But I have consistently woken up at these times outside of work. Like for example, in 2024, when I was studying and I lived in Sydney, I would usually maintain this kind of routine, maybe 4:30, 4:45, depending on what was going on. But I'm still a huge believer, a huge practicer of the early morning routine, even when the environment doesn't necessarily give you that fixed time. And I think that's where people struggle, because the reality is it's not like there's someone standing by your bed with a gun to your head saying that you've got to get up early. Ultimately, it's just a decision that you've made where you feel it's necessary to get up at that time for some commitment that you've got or for what you believe you should be doing as a man. So if that conviction isn't strong enough, it can definitely be hard to get out of bed. So what's the disclaimer? The disclaimer is that when you are starting out and trying to build this habit up, the reality is that it's going to feel hard, especially if your circadian rhythm is pushed much more forward. So you're used to going to bed late and waking up late. So as you slowly begin to pull that forwards, there's going to be an adjustment period where it's kind of going to feel unnatural, and it might not be your chronotype. That's what all the scientists talk about. But it's very much something that your body does adapt to, especially when you do things like this. You walk out in the sun, you exercise early in the day to get a higher cortisol response earlier in the day, and you slowly shift back that circadian rhythm. And this isn't stuff that I'm making up. This is how the body naturally adapts. Like when you go, let's say you shift to another country and you have to adopt that time zone, it's based on light and activity inputs. So if you're keeping your light and activity high early in the day and lowering that later in the day, your energy spikes, and inversely your melatonin release, which is what gets you sleeping, gets you to bed, will shift earlier to where it's meant to be. So waking up early, it really requires an intentional bedtime and an intentional sleep routine. Because while for myself personally, if I'm on my phone or watching a movie, or I've been out with people, like seeing my mates right before bed and I get home late, sure, I have an ability to wake up the next day at 4 or 5, but the reality is that I'm going to feel a lot worse. And sometimes you can't avoid that, but if that was me every night, I would really struggle. So a lot of actually getting up in the morning and having that good morning routine means that you've got to be super focused and intentional during the night, because it's hard to have one without the other. So keep the night intentional, keep the nighttime, the bedtime intentional, and also be careful what you're doing in those hours leading up to sleep. Try and avoid working out late at night. Try and avoid having, super intense study sessions. You can obviously still read a book and stuff, maybe get through some assigned readings. Try to stay off the screens, obviously. Stay off the alcohol. Alcohol disrupts sleep, it raises your heart rate and stuff. So there's a bunch of little tips like that I think once you make those a habit, once you get into the routine of sort of following sleep hygiene, it helps a lot in terms of maximizing the quality of those hours. Now, especially during the week, the reality is, if you've got study, family commitments, etc., and you're only able to get to bed at 9 or 9:30, and you want to be waking up at 4:30 or 5, you're not going to be getting a full 8 or 8.5 hours of sleep. And that's something that you've got to accept. Now, I listened to this great podcast with Andrew Huberman, and he said that they did this study where they basically lied to people, and they said, when you woke up, it was a sleep study, they said you had a good sleep, and then they'll tell this other person that they had a bad sleep based on the data. The data was falsified. So while I might have had a good sleep, if I was told I had a bad sleep, I would actually go and perform cognitively worse at the tests. And if I had had a bad sleep, but I was told that I had a good sleep, I would perform cognitively better. So it's literally about your mindset. So during the week, when you do have less hours, you can't be walking around with this idea that it's like, oh, I've had a shit night's sleep, I haven't slept enough, therefore I'm gonna be performing worse. You've got to have the mindset is that this is enough for me, what I'm doing is still important, and you've just got to go out there and get after it with that energy, with that mindset. If you're just thinking, oh, I woke up early, I haven't had enough sleep, man, I'm gonna feel so tired today, you literally will. But coming back to my point, let's say you are 6.5 or 7 hours, that's more than enough to function well and very well. That's probably what I average most days of the week is 7 hours. I don't really have weekends, so it's not like I'm able to catch up. But what I was going to tell you guys is that let's say you are following the stricter routine during the week, you can take an extra hour or two in the weekend. Don't pull an all-nighter, don't stay up till 3 in the morning, because then you're working against yourself in terms of building that healthy circadian rhythm. But you can sleep until 6:30 a.m. I wouldn't say 8 or 9 a.m. because then that's all of a sudden a 4 or 5 hour gap between your normal weekday schedule and now your weekend schedule. So the closer that you can keep them aligned, the more favors you're doing to yourself and to your body in terms of being able to sustain those early wake ups when you need to during the week. So it's very much about making this a consistent change. And again, it's going to be difficult at the start, but you just need to push through it. You've really got to push through it at the start, and you'll begin to see the fruit of that decision and of that commitment as you start to get used to it. And eventually you'll get to a point where you find it difficult doing the opposite, sleeping in and staying up late. Your body won't even want to because it's become so accustomed to the routine that it has that becomes your modus operandi. It becomes your status quo. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for you. I could obviously talk way more about morning routines, but I've got that in another video called The Biblical Patriarch Morning Routine. And that's sort of where I get really into the weeds in terms of what I do every morning, what are the sort of the 3 pillars of sort of keeping that morning routine intentional, as well as the mindset behind it. Why do we take this time? What should we be doing in this time? How does that small period of time, I like to call it the 20%, influence the 80%, the rest of our life? So if you want to watch something after this, I highly recommend that video. I put a lot of effort into it. We broke it down on the whiteboard and everything, so yeah. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed it, guys. About to smash a big gym sesh. But yeah, go hard, get after it, and please let me know any other questions that you have. God bless.